Hey, welcome back to Ping Pong Flix. My name is Chris Wong. So this article came out today. What appears to be a huge scoop from Humberto Gonzalez. Now I have to warn you, this is not your normal scoop. This is not a big scoop saying this director is doing this. This actor has been casted in this. This is happening in the movie. They have nothing like that. This is not too much of a big deal. It almost seems like a repeat of what we've heard before. But in any case, he did put it out. So Wonder Woman and the 5 words that saved DC movies from darkness. Humberto Gonzalez apparently interviewed Geoff Johns, and Geoff Johns told the Wrap they looked to the DC legacy and the qualities that first made people fall in love with superheroes. Get to the essence of the characters and make the movies fun. Just make sure that the characters are the characters with heart, humor, hope, heroics, and optimism at the base, said Johns. So this is not new. Hope and optimism were the 2 words that are going throughout probably only a year since Geoff Johns came aboard. He really makes a big deal out of saying the DCEU universe was in a very dark place and Wonder Woman saved it. Now, if you went back to my Wonder Woman review, I said the tone seems still the same. Same as the Batman v Superman, same as Man of Steel. It still was dark and grim with some added light humor to it, but it wasn't overly comical. It wasn't overly funny. It wasn't like Guardians of the Galaxy. It wasn't that much. It had maybe the tone of Civil War in a way, but less jokes. So I don't see what the big deal is about calling DC Extended Universe a very dark place all the time. Not like the tone needed to actually really change. But Geoff Johns wanted to get to that point, and the article seems to point that this was the change. This is what was needed to create this new fantastic Wonder Woman that has been universally loved by almost everyone. Critics, general audience, fan base, hardcore fan base, most hardcore fan base. So is that true? I mean, it goes into detail. If you go ahead and read this article, it goes into detail what happened. Geoff Johns, John Berg, all these high-level names of what happened after Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and they even threw in just Suicide Squad, because technically, I guess Geoff Johns came on during Wonder Woman. So I wanted to go back, I wanted to go back and look into the history of what actually happened. So I went back to May of 2016, and it says Batman v Superman Fallout. Warner Brothers shakes up executive roles. This is out of the Hollywood Reporter. This is May 17. Current executive VP John Berg and Geoff Johns will be DC's chief content officer of the new DC films going out. This was in May. This is one of the articles. There's a lot of articles on the set visit. You can go ahead and slashfilm.com had a set visit. They posted this article on June 21st. Their set visit was actually on June 17, 2016, and they're saying it's day 31 of a planned 111-day shoot. At this time, there were some scenes in there, lighthearted scenes, some of the joke stuff you see now in the trailers, and some of the stuff you already know about. On day 31, 30 days after the May 17 report that Geoff Johns and John Berg was involved. And a part of timeline, it could seem that they came on board on the first day of shooting. It almost feels like they didn't have time to correct anything, unless before they were officially announced on this article that they came on board. So presumably sometime after Batman v Superman. I don't know. I'm just looking at the facts here. But around June 17, 2016, they had some scenes. They're calling it more Marvel-like. Goes full Marvel in this case. Actually, they're saying how it's added lighted tones. There's some comic relief, some humor into it. You all know that set visit. A lot of these people, Birth and Death, or what is that other site that was a huge hater of Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, actually kind of liked this. Charles Roven were there. Deborah Snyder was there. Zack Snyder was there, and they all talked about the movie and what they wanted to do. So Zack Snyder admits that he was not expecting the critical reaction to Batman v Superman. He says, you know, when Batman v Superman first came out, I was like, wow, okay, woof. I kind of, let's see what it says. I kind of felt like, and I have had to, in my mind, make an adjustment. And maybe it is my hardcore take on characters as far as I love them, and I love the material. I do. I take it really deep. So I think the nice thing about working on Justice League is that it is an opportunity to really blow the doors off the scale and the bad guys and team building and all that stuff that I could justify as a big modern comic book movie, if that makes any sense. And Deborah Snyder is very clear about it. Justice League is a totally different movie than Batman v Superman. And so what they're implying here is that they did some changes. We've made some adjustments. You know, they admitted to making adjustments during this time of the set visit. In June 11, Geoff Johns co-wrote Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman movie. So here it's reported on BatmanNews.com that Wonder Woman must have undergone some major script changes last year. Jason Fuchs was reported to be writing in Wonder Woman movie. He even spoke about it vaguely last summer in an interview with Collider. But for some reason, that's not the name you'll see in the credits of Gal Gadot's upcoming movie anymore, and at that time. So according to a Comic-Con press release that Warner Brothers just put out this evening, the Wonder Woman screenplay was written by Alan Heinberg and Geoff Johns from a story by Zack Snyder and Alan Heinberg. We also got the first plot synopsis. So if you go back to that movie, so you go on IMDb.com, you go to Wonder Woman, you look at the writers. It's got Alan Heinberg screenplay, Zack Snyder story by, 3 more credits here. We're going to look at it right now. Writing credits: Alan Heinberg screenplay, story by Zack Snyder, story by Alan Heinberg, story by Jason Fuchs. There's no Geoff Johns in here. Like, where is Geoff Johns in this writing credit? What happened to that? If he was the one who actually changed it, adjusted it, and in certain cases they're saying edited into making this, he is credited here as an executive producer. And a lot of times executive producer is more of a funding, but I mean, we know that he added something to it. But that whole story about him changing the story, writing the story, and Jason Fuchs is no longer involved seems hearsay. That means Wonder Woman didn't really change at all. And then we know Patty Jenkins says we kept doing what we're doing. There was no shake-up, nothing. In that cases, then there is no change to Wonder Woman, right? And so that part of the rap doesn't seem to make sense. Then we go into September 8th of 2016 and says Collider. Geoff Johns details Justice League adjustments made in the wake of Batman v Superman. So article WSJ that mistakenly in the past, I think the studio has said, oh, DC films are gritty and dark, and that's what makes them different. That couldn't be more wrong. It's a hopeful and optimistic view of life. Even Batman has a glimmer of that in him. If he didn't think he'd make tomorrow better, he'd stop. Whether that means they're going to make adjustments or not, that actually, I don't think there's even a quote in here that he says he's make adjustments. And I could be wrong. If you guys can find that, that'd be great to add to this mystery of what has happened. But in these articles, they're clearly stating that Geoff Johns leading the charge, like how Kevin Feige is leading the charge and things like that. And to that credit, this is coming out of comicbook.com. Justice League crew sheds light on film's hopeful tone. This is in February 8th, 2017, this year. And there are going to be quotes in here that completely changes the story of what's actually transpiring. Crew members have come on. Damon Caro and Brian Hirota sat down for an interview with Heroic Hollywood, and they're talking freely about it. He says, Caro says, the interesting thing is on Man of Steel in Zack Snyder's head, he had the storyline treatment of where they're going to, and at the beginning of BVS, it was even richer and deeper. The arc was BVS was the midway point and the darker movie. Hence what happens at the end, the whole tone of it was darker. If you play your story all at one level, there are no peaks and valleys. There is no life. The great stories, the Greek tragedies, even life, we have to be knocked down before we can build our way up, Caro said. Justice League was always the rebirth of hope and the rise. He continued. People try to say that it's a response to the backlash, and I definitely say that criticisms were heard, but it's not like we threw everything out and started with a blank slate. It's a bit like Star Wars, and this is what I've been talking about this whole time. Empire Strikes Back, dark movie, but the Return of the Jedi is the rise and rebuilding of hope. It feels like people are really knocking, especially the rap, they're really going into this like Wonder Woman has changed. Geoff Johns has completely taken over, delved his hands in and changed it, and that's why Wonder Woman works, and all the other movies were terrible. You know, they really want to tell you that story, but looking at these articles from main headliners like the Hollywood Reporter, the Rap, their own articles, it just doesn't seem like that. Even in the film credits, it doesn't seem like that. Let's look at Justice League. And you look at Justice League, maybe you'll see something in there that actually says something about Geoff Johns being really involved. And you still see Chris Terrio. You still see Zack Snyder. You still see Chris Terrio. Joe Shuster. They've added Joss Whedon now as a writer for the additional scenes. So, and Geoff Johns is still here as a producer. Charles Roven's a producer. They're all being in a producer credited, but they're not actually writing the thing, or how much they affect what happens in the movie is not clear. But just judging from what you've seen here as being just the higher ups, not affecting the story as much, or is not being credited as the story writers. For Geoff Johns is a story writer. He great stories. DC Rebirth is pretty awesome compared to what New 52 was kind of is. But I understand that, and understand that they're really headlining Geoff Johns to be the savior of this, and Wonder Woman saved the DC Extended Universe from a very dark place. But putting it all together, I really still believe that Batman v Superman was always going to be that dark. Man of Steel was always going to be that sort of dark, even though that felt hopeful at the end. I mean, he saved the Superman saved the world. He smiled at the end with his Clark glasses and saying, he wants to get in down to the street level, and so he could help humanity. He literally saved the world. I don't know why anybody can't see that, but he saved the world. Okay, so Batman v Superman knocked him down. That was a new hope. Batman v Superman is Empire Strikes Back, and Justice League was always going to be the Return of the Jedi. And like I said, it looks like, from looking at the date where they started shooting, the 111-day shoot with the set visit, how much time is that to actively change the script and screenplay and shoot things? I mean, maybe it's not that long to change. Maybe it doesn't have that much to do to make those changes, or maybe they changed it before. I don't know. But just looking at the timeline, it just seems like they're doing something already. Justice League was already doing something. Wonder Woman is already shooting. Patty Jenkins was doing her own thing. They pretty much left her alone. Out of being freaked out that people were thinking that they've made huge changes to the DCEU, they brought these people and says, look, it's don't worry, don't freak out. For people who don't like dark stuff, Batman v Superman was a dark, that's our Empire Strikes Back. Here's our Return of the Jedi. Don't worry, you're jumping the gun. Were you harsh on Empire Strikes Back? Were you mad about Darth Vader? Were you mad about Luke Skywalker getting his hand chopped off? Were you mad that Han Solo was in carbonite frozen? I mean, like, it's so sad that they had to do that to make that go that way. But it's even sadder to give so much credit. I don't know, but it just feels like they're giving so much credit to Geoff Johns completely changing the movie. Like they had time, like they really had time to change it that much. And watching Wonder Woman, it just still feels like the DC Extended Universe. It just does. It does. It not necessarily has changed. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie. You know, it still feels the same way. There was a tragedy in there. It still had some dark places, and it had some hopeful places, just like Man of Steel. So I don't know what the big deal is, but that's the article. The Wrap put out. Humberto Gonzalez. I mean, he was a huge DC Extended Universe, you know, pro DC Extended Universe. I don't know what happened. He put this out, and I want you guys to decide: has it really changed? And I've made a video about it before, but this is adding fuel to the fire and more questions than answers. And I think once we see Justice League, I think we're going to have a clearer picture of where this DC Extended Universe is going, or we'll finally agree and say this is what it was all along. I'm sorry, Zack Snyder. You're right. This is what it was all along. And there were some adjustments, but it's not a huge shift like they're reporting it to be. Alright, well, thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.